Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Anthony Hinnon, Pennsylvania reporter for the Center Square. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania editor, Kristen Smith. Kristen, it is a couple weeks past the deadline for a state budget, and we do not have a state budget. And it's looking kind of unlikely that we'll get anything before the fall. What can you tell us here?
So for those counting, we are 13 days without a budget as of this podcast recording. And it's not by any means the first time that the state has blown past its June 30th deadline. So we're not in unusual territory here. What makes this different is that it's Shapiro's first budget, one that he kind of promised would build bridges and be really bipartisan and kind of this kumbaya moment of Pennsylvania state government that we just haven't really seen over the last 8 years. And of course, at the 11th hour, that fell apart because, he's a Democrat. He sided with Democrats in the House, and now we have no budget deal. Part of it, when you ask about who's to blame for this, as you can imagine, everyone's pointing fingers. And this, without getting too much into the weeds here, there's a $45.5 billion spending plan. Shapiro and Senate Republicans came to this deal because it gave a bunch of money for public education, probably the biggest single year increase in state history, which would be a huge win for Shapiro. And it included $100 million for a school choice scholarship program, which Democrats hate, but Republicans said it was a top priority. So it was this big bridge building moment. In fact, a lot of people were really shocked and hopeful about it. So when at the 11th hour, Shapiro said, I'm just going to take the school choice funding out of it so that the Democrats will pass the bill. As you can imagine, it was chaos. That bridge collapsed. And it seems like I said, all parties kind of drew their lines in the sand, refused to budge. The House ends up passing the same spending plan because Shapiro's promising to take the money out. But because of the legislative process, and there's just a lot of technical logistical steps that have to be followed before a bill actually gets to Shapiro's desk. The Senate kind of has this power, but does have this power where, number one, they have to sign the budget bill before it can go to Shapiro. And the House has to approve enabling legislation, which we call code bills, that direct the state on how to spend the money that's in the budget bill. So without any of these passed, the budget can go nowhere. I can't even get to Shapiro's desk for it to be line item vetoed. And the Senate adjourned right after they passed this bill on June 30th until mid-September. And the House was kind of poking them with a stick, you need to come back. You're holding up the whole budget. That's true in a way. But they're frustrated, furious, really, because the deal that they had made was crumbled behind their back the second they left Harrisburg. So it seemed like the House was just kind of waiting around for a week, just kind of seeing if perhaps there was negotiations going on behind the scenes, and I'm sure there was. Doesn't seem like they've gone anywhere. And so the House this week said, guess what? We're not going to come back till the end of September now. And whether or not that holds true, who knows? But at this point, it's a pretty ominous sign for the future of the budget.
So what jumps out here is a couple of weeks late, state, local governments can keep functioning. But, the funding's going to run out eventually, and we need a new budget. How is this going to affect, county governments, local governments, school districts? When do we hit a crisis? When does someone's hand get forced?
I think it depends on the agency, but I would say right around the time the school year starts, so really we're only talking about a month or two from now, school districts are going to be wanting that money. They, expect it. They use it for their operations, so they will probably have some problems. State agencies, county programs, those are normally the ones that provide services, human services and different programs that offer public assistance benefits, things like that. Those are going to be the first ones to take a hit because they need that money. They spend it every month. We've been in this situation before. There was 1 year in recent history that we didn't have a budget till December. There were accounting things that were done to help keep agencies and school districts afloat, but it's really not an ideal situation. And I don't think it's in anyone's best interest to hold up the budget over this deal. I mean, quite frankly, no matter how much the different chambers and leaders try to displace blame, none of them are coming out looking great about this. It seems like an awfully petty thing to do to each other and hold up the rest of the funding for the state. So I think within a couple of months by the fall, you're going to start to see some real struggle among all of the agencies and school districts and county offices and everything that rely on state funding for their operations. Whether, again, this isn't set in stone, even though they've both said, well, we're not going to come back to September. There could be some deal that happens that brings them back sooner. And I think everyone hopes that that's the case. But, they're known to dig in their heels. We saw that earlier this year, the whole collapse over the constitutional amendment. Everyone kept hoping that maybe they would figure out something before the special elections. They never did. So do we have that similar, partisan politicking going on behind the scenes? Yes. Is it different? Yes. But it's not exactly the best sign for the rest of the state government that needs this funding, that cannot play political games, but needs to actually do their job.
Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Kristen Smith, this is Anthony Hinnon. Please subscribe, and thanks for listening.